back to another Transformation Mondays. I'm so happy to be here. This is another day where we're going to explore how we can transform our workflows, our skill sets, our designs. So if you haven't joined the chat, join the chat, say hello. Already we have Ahmed, we have Clever Devlin. I will always be a fan of your username. It's a really, really cool name. We have Dawn saying, howdy, y'all. Are you from Texas? I'm in Texas too. Okay, so today we're going to be exploring something really, really cool. I'm going to be looking into the past, but approaching it with some futuristic tools because, of course, everything in Adobe lately has been full of AI and full of just really, really cool tools that just takes our workflow right into the future. And so before we get started, a little bit about myself for those of you who may not know my work. There you go. Okay. So I focus on different mediums, photography, graphic design, and film being my strongest focus. And most of all, mentoring artists, aspiring artists, because once upon a time, I was in a similar place and I learned everything from the World Wide Web. I mean, almost everything, but I'm going to say it crosses the gamut. You know, everything I have under my tool belt has been developing across the years because of resources like Adobe Live. So I am happy to be in this position to teach y'all some of the things I discover along the way because our industry is often changing. It's rapidly changing, in fact, and it's been a whirlwind. So hi, Jasenia. We have some more folks on the chat. We have Cody. Hi, Cyn. Your mic volume up a bit. Oh, yes, I'll turn up my volume. This always changes a little bit from stream to stream, but let me know if that sounds a little bit better. All right. So I'm going to show you what we're going to be working on today. So I'm here on Photoshop Beta, and Photoshop Beta is equipped with some more recent updates, and they eventually trickle down to Photoshop. So if you want to be among the insiders who gets to test out the tools that the developers are making in behind the scenes before they're absolutely to perfection and out into the actual Photoshop app, definitely go into your Creative Cloud and download Photoshop Beta or anything under Beta, and you could be a test user. Okay, so here I have a. Here you go. We're back. All right, so here I have this this image that I created. So I've been on a bit of a journey lately, exploring some of the thrift stores near me and the antique stores. Texas is very peculiar for having all of these, I don't know, this past just in one single room, and these antique stores are absolutely amazing. So I created this image based out of film images that I found in these antique stores. And they came in black and white. And I'm going to show you here today how I approach them and explore a new, unexplored workflow. Just trying to see how I can bring these film photos to life with color, with some expansion, with more detailing. And this is just experimentation. We're just exploring our skill sets to see how we can bring these images to life. So let me show you a little bit more here. We have Oliver saying hi. Ahmed saying hi also. Hi, everyone. All right, so let me just switch this up for y'all. So I'm gonna just come and intervene with the camera real quick. All right, cool. So I have these images that I've been able to collect. And if you're curious about perusing into the past, I mean, I definitely are. Just entering photography for me has always been an exploration and almost experimenting with what I'm interested in and seeing the way people candidly capture these images that I really had very little in taking these photos with the exception of curating these images. I love the composition of some of these photos. Look at this. It's so cool. This one I call Brothers. I don't know if that is what is the story behind this, but I love that they're imitating each other. They must have been close to some degree because even their pose is so similar. And I had this really strong intrigue when I came across these images. And then I call this one Sisters because they're also really peculiar in that way and the way they're posing. It makes me analyze the composition, the attitudes behind these images, the people, the subject matter, right? Like look at this image. It's kind of wonderful. What is the story behind it? I can see they have some I think helmets, maybe they're coming from a football game. There's just so many peculiarities to looking into the past and finding yourself just understanding the same skills that you've learned, but into somebody else's viewpoint and perspective lens of how they took an image, maybe in the 50s and the 40s. This one looks like it was potentially taken in the 40s, just based on their hair. And so it's been super fun to just explore these unfound treasures, right? And bring them into this new workflow that I just wanted to experiment with and see if we can transform some of these images into color photography, one, and also potentially repair them, right? Because you can see some of these are very foggy, they're faded, they're scratched out. So they've gone through quite a bit, and we're gonna try to repair them here. Let's see, let's bring it back to me now. All right, you're nice and secure there. All right, so let's get started here. So jump onto Photoshop Beta if you want to follow this process. I am going to be in Photoshop Beta, and let's go find some of my reference images. So I didn't do anything peculiar to these images. I don't actually have a scanner. I used to once upon a time, but because I was so precious about my own film photography, but I went kaput. So I had to say goodbye, unfortunately, to that scanner. So instead, point of this is I found myself just taking a photo of it. I tried my best to put it in a good light reference that isn't going to influence the image. Right, so let's rotate this here. So let's do some canvas rotation, counterclockwise. All right. So you can see what I'm talking about. Look at their posture, their poses, and the way that they're choosing to express themselves. Even down to their arms, they're imitating each other, and that's, imitation is a form of flattery, is what they say. I don't think they were talking about art. I think they were talking about gestures, physical gestures. I don't know who they are, but nevertheless, right? Like I imagine it's that when you feel close to someone, you tend to imitate their characteristics. So this is the Brothers. We're gonna go in here and try to repair. This came out a little bit warped because my image and the photo, everything's a little bit folded. So let's do a little bit of repairing here. And I'm gonna begin by approaching this image with the perspective warp that's under Edit. And we're gonna click. And the first thing you're gonna notice is that we're in layout mode. And what that means is that we can lay out our points in the spaces that we want to later warp, right? So we're gonna warp this in just a second. So I've put my pinpoints in those edges so that I can start to manipulate not only the way it's cropped, but also the way it's warped. So now we're ready to click warp. Let's see. Yeah, Ahmed already has a good insight, restoration filter and colorize filters. Yeah, you might be familiar with some of these tools, and hopefully this inspires you to go on your own treasure hunt to find images that can be repaired, or you can explore them with the tools you know in Photoshop, because oftentimes part out part of our learning process doesn't just happen in our own artwork, but it also happens by working on someone else's artwork. I know that in my experience, I've had most of my skill set developed in spaces where I had to work for a client, things that aren't didn't entirely belong to me. They were passed by a photographer, passed by another designer. So it gives you a level of accountability, right? But also you can have a little bit of fun in how you develop your skill sets. Give yourself projects such as this. And I'm just gonna move those pinpoints until I have. Oh, I forgot to give my dog a snack, so she's crying right now. So here you go. So she says hello. Y'all know who she is. Um, she's my newest addition, a little pit bull terrier. She's still pups. So I'm just gonna add this up to here, and I'm just using these guidelines. If you don't see the guidelines, hit Command and that semicolon, and you should be able to see those guidelines, and you can make them disappear in the same way. So we're very big fans of shortcuts here in Transformation Mondays, so we're definitely going to be covering that. And Clever Devlin says the paper finishes and edges are interesting too. Yeah, they are, right? So you might choose, in fact, to keep some of these details that would otherwise seem imperfect, and maybe something you want to remove. I'm going to show you how to remove it, but it's up to you if you want to keep some of those detailings. So I'm going to hit this button right here to confirm my warping, right? So went from that to this, and I'm going to crop inside of this image because I only want the image. I don't want the framing. It's up to you if you want to keep it. Now, something I realized when I'm cropping is that I need to make sure that my cropping is under transparent default if I want to use it as I'm accustomed to using it. I had it under generative expand, and I was so confused why it wasn't working. So definitely look out for that transparent default, right? There's some small things that you can, if you start to notice, you can see in Photoshop that little notes that are left behind that attempt to help you. So definitely look out for information like that, like tips, just notes. This is made by somebody, okay? There's a degree of consideration in that. And I think for me, whenever I'm trying to explore an application, it helps me explore with a little bit more ease and less of, oh my God, I'm gonna get lost in here, which has happened, right? It does happen. So I'm gonna crop that in. And you can see there's a lot of little scratches everywhere. Mostly these scratches didn't happen while the image was shot. It happened post the image was printed. So it wasn't handled with care, in other words. So you can see that there's a lot of little, I have the word in the frontal lobe, I do, but they're like little details that you may want to keep. We often artificially introduce them today, right? Grain, dust, and scratches, right? We actually have a plugin where we can render things like that or remove things like that. And noise, we have dust and scratches. We can actually render dust and scratches, and it all comes from our nostalgia for film photography. Add noise. That would have been considered an error in the past, but we do it to give a bit of an homage to this older photography. All right, so I'm gonna make a copy here because I don't want to work destructively. That is always important, right? So we're gonna go in here, and if you're just joining me, let me know in the chat where you're joining me from. I know everyone here is from all over the world, so I'm joining you from Austin, hot Austin, Texas. one more month and I'm hoping it just gets a little bit cooler, back to the beanie era, you know? So, okay, I'm going to crop this image. Actually, the first thing I want to do is I want to go directly into neural filters. And let's start exploring neural filters, right? We have different options in here. And you're going to see there's different options under different categories, okay? Portraits, creative, color, photography, and restoration. So if I wanted to do a little bit of restoration here, you'll notice that there's a download button for each of these. And for this one, there isn't one because I already downloaded it. So there is a level of downloading because it's downloading all that metadata that makes it work. So I have restorations on. So this one's attempting to restore those things that I mentioned, the dust and scratches, those types of things. So let's turn that on. It is in beta mode. So it's important that whenever you see that it's in beta mode, that you, we leave reviews for our Amazon purchases. We leave reviews for all these things. If you leave reviews here, it can actually directly influence the way in which direction this feature or this tool goes moving forward. So I do like testing some of these and seeing how far it goes. Sometimes some of these don't make it to Photoshop. So you got an insider, you got a chance to test it before it was gone. So there's a little bit of that. So we get a chance here to enhance the photo, enhance the faces. And by enhancing the faces, it mostly is going to smooth those faces, which can be a little bit tricky because the nature of smoothing something means it might be appealing to skin, faces, portraits, and things like that. But in the criteria of the entire image, it might look like the image itself is not focused. So you have to be a little bit careful about those elements. So I'm going to lower this because I don't want it to be too high. And I'm not going to spend too much time in this space because I think this is something you can discover and zoom in quite a bit. It might not translate so well here, but I can already see there's some dust and scratches removed. I can see that the skin is smooth, and you can see down here that it's processing on device. So it's processing based on my computer. So, you might want to take that in consideration if your computer is not that strong. Again, with the adjustments, I can add a bit of noise reduction, color noise reduction, and it's going to update as I move these toggles. I don't have to hit yes. One of my feedbacks is that I want to hit OK. I want to see a preview, but because each effect takes time, I like to see just a preview and not have it all render each time. But so be aware of things like that. Other than that, I like the way this looks, and I'm going to now consider how I output this design. So I'm going to output this by, not by current layer, because that means it modifies the current layer I have. And we said this at the beginning, we're not working destructively, and that would be destructive. So we need a new layer, or we can use other options like new layer mask, smart filter, new document. So my favorites are new layer mask and smart filter, because new layer mask gives me a masking option. Smart filter lets me revisit this effect. So this time, new layer mask, and I'm gonna try to get it through now. So you can see that the effect was applied because everything is a little bit smoother, but I may not like that exactly. Actually, even removed some of the things that I didn't want it to remove. Like this fellow had a really cool metal here, right? So this metal must have been important. So I don't want to remove those things. So what I want to do is remove, subtract from mask selection. I'm going to delete this layer, and I'm going to add instead a black layer by holding Option and hitting my layer button down here. And so now I can choose which areas I want to add that effect into, right? I can do that by adding a brush in white, and that will do that. That will add that smoothing effect. You can see that there, right? However, what if I want to approach it in a different way? Like I want that particular effect to only hit a certain color range. So we can go into select color range, and you can see there we can select either the blacks or all the whites and make that selection, and then allow the mask visibility to only be within that selection. So let's select those shadows, hit OK, and then in my mask, which is currently black, I'm going to add white by making sure my color is in the background, right? And not the foreground, but the background, and hitting Command backspace. Wait, backspace. Oh, my select color range went away. So let's select color range. Okay. Select color range. There you go. And I'm gonna hit the Command backspace, and that's gonna add white into all these areas. So now I've chosen very carefully where I want that effect to be. And that's key because we don't want effects to just be for shock value, right? We want effects to have precision, to allow us to do the things that we want to do. So we're exploring how we can do that here. Now that we've done that, let's go into a new layer, and we're going to merge this layer. We're going to hit Shift Option Command E, which is one of my favorite ways to know that I've entered a new step. So step 2, I'll call it. And I'm going to go into that cropping tool that we talked about earlier. And instead of having it as default, this time I'm going to switch over into generative expand. Okay. So let's say I wanted this image to be bigger, maybe a different ratio. Part of it is because I want a different ratio, and part of it is because I wonder what else was beyond these edges. And I know we will never know, right? This is an experiment, so it's almost just yielding to our imagination. It's really not historically accurate, but it's quite interesting to generate effects based on a futuristic tool that allows you to just explore an old image. So let's see what happened there. Let's see if we wanted to expand this image. Go here and hit generate. Let's see what we have. Ooh, that was spooky. So there's some different effects that happen here. I liked it better when I had a more even playing field. So with generative fill, lots of different effects can happen. There is a certain degree of context that it's taking into account because my image is within that effect. Hopefully it does it this time. You can see what I was referring to. We have tips here, need a fast composition, change. You know, we have an insider, what it's about. So in this image, we can see the background of the house, which is so intriguing to see it. Just like opens up your scope of view. And of course, it may not have been like this, but it's taking into account a lot of different elements like the color palette, the lights, the light conditions, the textures all around. And some of these I may not like, so I can just trash them. And some of the ones that I do like, I can keep them in here. I'm not entirely sure if by keeping them, it influences the next generation of images that the next variation of images you choose to generate. But in my experimental process, I found that it has. So I like to erase the ones that are not working so that it doesn't influence the next set of variations. And look at this one. This one's very peculiar. So we were here, and now we expanded our image. Cody says, looks like a horror movie. Yeah, I think it's partially because, yeah, we have this dim color palette, right? And all of that got uh, funneled through the generative fill. So let's add some color, right? Let's bring this up, right, into a little bit more of happy spirits. So let's see. I'm gonna hold Shift Command E again. So now we're entering a different facet, part 3. And this is a workflow I like to do. So this essentially is a compressed image. I still have my working files here if I choose to go back. And that is a workflow that works for me as I'm continuing to explore things. So we're gonna jump back into filter neural filters. Something I often do by mistake is I hit the first neural filter. This is actually to create the previous neural filter effect you've done. So that is a shortcut. In reality, any of the tools live down here. So I'm gonna undo that because I didn't mean to do that. So go into filter, filter gallery. Oops. Filter, neural filters. There you are. I read the word filter and I go for it. Okay. So let's go into colorize. And again, you might have to download this, and to make the effect, we have to turn it on. So now that looks less spooky. That's looking a little bit closer to the potential of what this image would have been had it been taken with a color film. Okay, so in here we have some profiles that we can try out, or we can go into this section down here and start playing with the saturation, the cyans and reds, magentas and greens, yellows and blues. And in my experience, this has been really cool to play with if you want this film result, because color film often has had different color outputs. So some are a little bit warmer, some are a little bit cooler, some have green tint. They're almost infamous for being for having those color palettes. So you can replicate a little bit of that by adding a little bit of red or some magenta or some green. So trying to play on the opposite ends. So if you pull this one to this, if you pull this toggle to this area, you pull the other one to the opposite. And it can give you a different, more custom result to what you were doing. I don't really like the blue one. I like it a little bit warmer. And just be kind, be subtle. I think I went too far there. And now when it comes to some of these images, I feel like it did a really good job at painting everything, right? Now, something I want you to know is that if you wanted to change a color here, particularly, we can unselect this auto color image or continue during the auto color image and just add a point into a selection, right? So let's say I add a point to his pants. It will dye those pants into the color that you select. Say green, blue. Now, a really big misconception is that I'm selecting an object. I'm not selecting the object pants. I'm not selecting an object tree, an object house. I'm actually selecting the luminance that exists within the color, and I think that's the way the effect takes place. So for example, let's put his pants like green, maybe here. There. So for example, if I add a point in his shirt right here, you'll notice that it's going to affect back into the house, because his shirt and the house have almost the exact same luminance. So it's dealing with the light balance in the color to be able to detect what to color, essentially. So it's not that we selected a shirt, it's that we're selecting that level of light. And so that's important to know if you're going to go in here and customize some of these colors. So some of these may be a little bit easier to discern because they're under a certain a single category of light, right? Midtones, highlights, shadows. Lights, highlights, midtones, shadows. So this would fall under potentially midtones or shadows. So of course it dyed both the vest and the pants. So you can start to understand there how it takes place and how it's working out. So I'm going to press OK here, but before I do that, let's select what we want. Do we want a smart filter? Do we want a new layer mask? Do we want just simply a new layer? I think I want a new layer so we can play around with some other photos here. And that's it. We have a new rendered image that potentially brings this image into a new world and brings it to life a little bit with color, right? So we started here. We moved on to doing a little bit of scratches and dust reduction, and then we expanded that image, which, by the way, we can still change our mind because this is non-destructive. So we can always double click and choose a different scenario, right? And then we went on to adding color. So now we have a colored image. And now these might not yield the same exact result for you because generative fill is always so random and is really randomized. The effects I got previously looked a lot different. Look at this. Isn't that funny? Like there's something else back here. Don't know what it is. But yeah, you can start to see how they start to come to life. So let's pull in another image here. I'm gonna close this and start to bring another image for our inspiration to start playing around. All right, so let's do this one. Photoshop Beta. And let me know in the chat if you have any questions so far. Peter says, love using the neural filters for fixing old photos. Yeah, you might have some beautiful photos of your parents who are like incredible at photographing, which like some people's, I really envy like my wife's parents. They have albums and albums and albums of photos. It's amazing. You know, it's a thing that not everybody had particular access to or a liking to. So it's feel definitely like, how do I say, blessed if you have a chance to have access to those photos, bring them into Photoshop, show your parents like a new color. I mean, doesn't have to have a use. This could just be for you to play and experiment. Not everything has to have a purpose. I try to tell myself that all the time. You always have to speak to your inner artist and let them know that sometimes it's okay to just play. All right, so I think I brought the wrong image. Let's see. Let's bring in this one. There you go. So let's rotate by counterclockwise here. This image, the composition of this image is what got me. It's just phenomenal. I don't know if it was intentional, but something tells me that whoever was on the other side of the lens was a little bit more trained or just had a bit of more an artistic inkling, because there's the fence here, which is in the foreground, which acts as a frame into your subject, which is this fella on the horse herding cows, it looks like. And he has this cowboy hat. I mean, his silhouette is so cool. And then you have all of this beautiful empty space, which is like just breathing room, right? Breathing room for the image. So your eye navigates from this to all of this. And there's angular lines. Even these lines are parallel to these lines. There's a lot there. I don't know if this person knew that this photo was that great, but here we are in 2023, almost 2024, appreciating it. So that's wonderful. So I wanted to play with this image. There's so many things I still want to do this image. I would leave it as this because I appreciate it in all its trueness and strangeness, right? Like I love it. But we're playing around here, so let's see what else we can do. I wanted to experiment with this image because I love this cowboy. And who doesn't love horses? Oh my God, I really zoomed in there. I wanted to say sorry, but maybe you guys wanted that close-up look. I'm gonna go and crop here, and again, go back to default because we don't want the generative fill to get activated or generative expand. And we're going to crop this image into maybe a square. We can crop it into a square. And what I mostly want is I want to borrow this beautiful silhouette here of this fella and use one of the generative filters to imitate an artistic style. So let's see here. Now, we don't have any information here, but I wanted my crop to have him in the center. So I'm gonna add a little bit of detailing in here. So I'm gonna use generative fill for that. Just hit generate and that should do the trick. Peter says cracks and scratches and realistic color to photos are really old. Yeah, like it's kind of interesting to add those elements or find yourself in this space so that you can gain inspiration how you can bring some of this analog uh, inspiration analog detailing into things that are less analog, like illustrations, vector illustrations, digital illustrations, and kind of merge those mediums, right? So let's see here. I feel like my mic is covering. I'm trying to not be too far from the mic, trying too hard here. So let's see. I'm going to go into. Oh, okay. We added that generative fill. Cool. I think that does the trick. Awesome. I like it. So I'm going to shift Command E to get a new layer. And I'm going to bring that over to neurofilters. Neurofilters? Don't mess with me. Okay, there. Neurofilters. This is why you don't skim. You got to read. We got to read. Even though we're visual people, we have to read because if you skim, you select the wrong option. So we're going to select here this really cool effect. It's called style transfer. So let's turn that on. And style transfer is really peculiar because it's bringing references of different artists, established artists of our time, postmodern, modern. You know, there's a nice selection here. Van Gogh, pointillism. So Hokusai was the first one. I love Hokusai. Got to see that beautiful mountain in real life, which was amazing. And the Fuji. Ooh, I went too far there. There you go. Maybe in this effect, you definitely want to be subtle. Now, the question comes, like, what if I find, first of all, if I wanted to do a style of Hokusai, I think that would be really fun. I can print this image, give it to grandpa, or give it to mom, you know, to remember grandpa. Whatever the case may be, I love filling my studio with inspiration, with things that belong to me that I've created. So this just makes me want to go right into the printer. So I love this one, for example, is a really cool one. I think it gives that essence of cowboyish, you know, that texture. I think it looks so cool. I love this. And so this looks like it was made with pastels. I mean, we can definitely use this as a point of reference to actually get on a canvas, get yourself a canvas, sit outside on your balcony, in your yard, and use it as a point of reference to evoke this style and sort of know where the colors land. I love cross pollination into different visual art forms because they all end up inspiring you. So don't feel the boxed in. Boxing but yourself in is always terrible. Not a good idea. So I encourage you to explore the past, the future, everywhere. So what if I want something like this, but I have maybe an inspiration of my own, something I wanted to look for. So we have some extra styles here that we can also try and download. I'm going to instead upload a custom image of my own. So let's see here. I'll bring here my file of reference, which was, okay, so I had recently, here it is. So I recently covered my windows, some of my windows where the light comes through with this really cool mosaic-like texture. It looks like the glass itself was made like this. The light comes through here, it creates these beautiful, colorful lights when the day starts and also somewhere in the evening. And it's so cool. So I wanted to bring this image as a point of reference. I decided to crop it in a little bit more so that the reference is a little bit more of a close-up. So it's a cropped in version. So let's select that image. So I'm going to say use this image, right? So this is a good way for you to recognize that you can potentially create the reference that it's going to emulate. So this is starting to kind of represent those textures, those mosaic textures, and I can choose to play with how much strength of that effect is being applied, how much opacity too, because I still might want to be able to have visibility of the image beneath it. And that can give me a strongest sense of the silhouette. But that looks so cool because I picked an image that is still discernible even though it's broken into all these different pieces. So I'm up. Yeah, so I'm just reading the chat here. Always trying to catch up. Okay, so yeah, it just looks really cool and I really love this effect. I might want to add a little bit of saturation here. It asks me if I want to preserve the color, which is the color of the image, not the color of my reference image. So that's something to think about. I definitely like the color of the reference image. So I can download this as a layer mask, as a smart filter. Let's try a smart filter and press OK. So smart filter is important because when we go into smart filter into our layer, we're going to have a smart filter attached to it, which means I can always double click and it'll bring me back into my interface here, my dialog box for neural filters. So I can always modify and go back to a different effect that I was liking, right? So it's up to you how much you get to play with this, because this way I feel like you can always go back and say, well, maybe I can take a different image of my reference image in the evening when the light is a little bit stronger. Those are things that would run through my mind in order to create this effect. Maybe I should have gone a closer up image with a better camera. And so you can get a little bit more precious, more precision about this effect. And that ended up resulting in this beautiful mock-up, right? So just to inspire you a little bit on Maya. She's a cone head right now. She's going through it like a puppy would. So yeah, you get to potentially have it in your house, and it's a beautiful moment of inspiration of something you created from scratch. By the way, I grabbed this mock-up directly from the Adobe stock. So Adobe stock has all of these cool mock-ups that you can directly download, right? And then there are so many in different sections for web, for print. And this one particularly was just free. So I have a way to show you my idea. You can show your clients your idea if you're in that state of your process. You can show yourself the concept you're trying to come up with. So you decide before you decide to spend some ink and print, right? So yeah, we did this one. So cool. I think we have maybe room for one more. Let's see how we're doing. Awesome. Okay. So let's see. I have this image here. Ooh, it's right upside down. So let's open this image. Open with. All right, for some reason I took all my images upside down, but let's do 180 degrees here. Double click to enable it, do a copy, and let's play with this image. I love this image. I mean, you got a little sneak peek when we were looking at all of those photos, but I love this image because it has a level of, oh my God, I had coffee and I forgot. This is my first coffee of the day, but I guess this whole thing got me energized anyways. Thanks for the Yeti because it's still hot. All right, so I love this image because it has just so many levels of intrigue. I love analyzing my own photos. The moment I was able to be equipped with understanding my own photography, uh, it was a very important, special moment in my life because one thing is to say, hey, I think I took a good photo. Another thing is to understand the visual language that you're actually introducing within your photos. So I love being able to do that with other photos, whatever photos I see. I can see here, for example, first of all, subject matter. We have this fellow looking directly into the lens. Amazing. We have um, I'm going to say they're his teammates because it looks like they are football players. We have them here in the background, but they're still in the background. They're not quite in the foreground. He's still the most foreground element or subject matter. We have all of these leading lines going inwards, so it gives the image depth. It's not flat. And unfortunately, it was cropped out, so that's kind of a bummer. Subject matter again, this bus, wow. You know, they don't make them like that anymore. Maybe they do, but for a hefty price. So if you live in America and you see one of these, or if you live someplace else and you see buses like this, it's so cool to know that one day the image you take of that bus, so the image you take of that vehicle, could eventually become this kind of blast of the past because things might change, right? In a number of years. So that said, now that I've analyzed this photo, I also, by the way, found a little person here picnicking, I guess. Looks like, you know, they're coming from a park. I can see a little car in here also. I love analyzing the photos. It's so intriguing. I don't know, she's having a field day with her toys right now. Okay, so let's crop in here. And we're gonna try to do this fast. All right, we're gonna crop, we're gonna do our perspective warp and make sure that this is cropped in. Blazing fast. Here we go. Oh, and this is what happens when you're trying to do things blazing fast. It's like, it's so funny. All right, so yeah, we're gonna place our layout like we did before, and then we're gonna hit warp, and that will let us straighten our image a little bit. Hit enter, and then we're going to crop, but this time we're gonna use generative expand. And we're going to remove that ratio because I want to be able to expand it however I want to expand it. So hit clear. And oh, I wasn't quite ready to expand. I actually wanted to do a regular cropping. No problem. I can still change that setting. Press enter there. Looking good. Oh, Peter's joining us from New Jersey. Hey. You can always restream this Transformation Mondays and all of the other Transformation Mondays on my website. I'll show you in a bit how. So let's crop one more time. And this time I'm going to use generative expand to just expand that bus edge a little bit. And maybe not so much shoes because I don't want the shoes. I like the way it was cropped in from around the ankles. It's okay. I like that. There's a little bit of mystery, but I want to bring back the bus. So let's see. And we have that, oh, cool. So we have some options here. I don't like whatever was going on there. So let's try this one. Let's try that one. Oh, I think I like that one. So Shift Command E. Filter and neural filters to colorize our image. So let's hit colorize. Wow, that's so cool. It never ceases to surprise me. It's so awesome. So I'm going to move these toggles over to create a different hue of the film color palette. I think something around there. Oh, I notice if I go to cyan too fast, it turns funky. There you go. That's kind of more what I wanted. Cool. And we can also export as a smart filter, and that's going to give us that option to revisit this whenever we want to. If we wanted to do a color transfer, we can also do a particular style that just makes it feel monochromatic. So if I apply that, for example, onto this image, say for example, something like this, I might want to turn this one off. It will create a bit of a monochromatic look on my image. So there's something that is a little bit too strong. There's something there to explore when it comes to transferring colors, colorizing images, photo restorations of your own images or images from the past. Hit OK there. And we can begin to explore different ways of expressing ourselves, transforming images that we find or images of our own. Super, super cool. Here are some of the other ones I created. This football fella I will explore in my YouTube on my own live streams, so definitely check that out. And yeah, I hope this made you feel more compelled to not just try something new within the application, but also find new ways to give yourself projects, ways to explore new ideas. And if you want to restream this or any other live stream that I've been able to host here on Adobe with this beautiful community, definitely check out our past streams. I just had amazing hosting this morning with Courtney Swift Copeland. So definitely restream that. So much good info in that. And check out my long form educational content on Skillshare. This has been so much fun, guys, and everyone out there. I am so appreciative of everyone in the chat, and I'll see you next time.